Good morning. And welcome to Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church's in-person and online worship. Whether today is your first time here or you've been coming for years, we're so glad you're with us. My name is Pam Jackson. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm serving as this morning's worship associate. We are a growing community that transforms lives through the power of love. Our mission calls us to celebrate diversity, encourage spiritual growth, and promote social responsibility while we travel on and care for the earth. A special welcome to those at home who are joining us on Zoom today. If you're attending for the first time, please go to our website and fill out the welcome card so we can know more about you. And I just have one announcement, and that's that coffee, tea, or cocoa will be served out in the foyer, and you're really welcome to come back in here as well as mingle in the foyer after the service. Now we invite you all to take this opportunity to silence your cell phones so that we can be fully present to one another. After the service, I already said this announcement, after the service, grab that coffee or tea in the kitchen, come back in here, or head down to the end of the long hallway to join a group for the brown bag lunch. Those on Zoom may stay on and connect with one another. And now let us center our hearts and minds with the ringing of the chimes.
Good morning. Good to see you all. Let's take a breath. I'm Reverend Tara. For those of you I haven't met before, I use they, them pronouns, and I serve as the minister of this congregation, Allen Avenue UU Church, or A2U2 for short. We gather this morning amidst much activity on this MLK and inauguration weekend. It was wonderful to see a number of you at the People's March downtown yesterday, where hundreds of Mainers joined together to speak out in favor of equality, reproductive rights, racial justice, and so much more. And I hope to see some of you this afternoon at 2 p.m. in South Portland for the second annual MLK service, Songs and Wisdom for Our Times, led by members of the Greater Portland Multi-Faith Clergy Group with music from the Sea Change Chorale, hosted by First Congregational Church, UCC. I will be there, and I hope to see some of you. This morning, we gather and hold together all the feelings that are present to us in this monumental moment in our history. After the lamp lighting this morning, our children and youth will join Emily for an RE session exploring the power of music in movements for social justice. Here in the sanctuary, we embark on week 2 of our 3-week journey in worship that attempts to answer the question, what is the role of the church in these times? Last week, the role of the church is to be a balm, and today, to be a bridge. Next week, to be a beacon. How are we as the church called to be a bridge? And how are we answering that call? As you arrive here and settle into our time together, hear these words of invocation. Here we are in our circle again, a circle of vision and reflection, a forum for deciding and empowering. Here we are, at the base of another bridge, another space spanning the shores of today and tomorrow, beckoning us to cross the chasm one day at a time. Here we are, gathered again at the cusp of the future, at the boundary that holds community together. We are here in a circle of love and trust, brought to this moment by a series of choices and promises, by hope and gratitude, by our own shadows faced and befriended. With a servant's heart, with a leader's listening, with a parent's love truer than all our inner trembling, let us model the health we seek for all and lean in to community. Somewhere out there, all we dream is possible. Somewhere in here, we are sowing the seeds. Friends, come and be welcome. You are joyfully called to worship.
As we light our sanctuary chalice this morning, those joining on Zoom are invited to light a chalice or a candle near you to connect us more deeply with one another. I will light candles, wrote Howard Thurman in his 1950 Christmas poem. Candles of joy, despite all the sadness. Candles of hope, where despair keeps watch. Candles of courage, for fears ever present. Candles of peace, for tempest-tossed days. Candles of grace, to ease heavy burdens. Candles of love to inspire all my living. Candles that will burn all year long.
And we light a second candle this morning, a candle of community. Today, simply for peace. That the events at the Capitol tomorrow be peaceful, that the return of the hostages in the Middle East proceed. Will you take a breath with me? Our opening hymn is number 325 in your gray hymnal or up on the screen, Love Makes a Bridge. Dale will play it through once, and then you are invited to rise in body or in spirit as we join our voices in song. I'm going to share the Time for All Ages message this morning from here in the pulpit because I need my hands, and I can't hold a mic and a script and this. So today we're talking about the role of the church as being a bridge. There's a number of ways we can be a bridge. There's a number of different types of bridges we can be, and we'll talk about that later. But I want to start by talking about being willing to talk with and listen to people who have different viewpoints than we do. Oh, I rolled my eyes so many times planning this service at myself. Why is it important to talk to people who think very differently than we do? For understanding? Because love. We share the world with them. Find common ground. Peace. Survival. Neighbors. Bridges. What are some bad things that can happen when we only talk with people who agree with us? Blindness. Myopia. Echo chambers. Rigid thinking. Okay, what are some good things that can happen when we only talk with people who agree with us? We feel comfortable, validated, supported, safe, alliances, creative action, resistance. Okay, so both have risks, right? Only talking to people who agree with us can have negative risks and also benefits. What about some strategies, some tools that we can use in conversations across difference? Listening, patience, calmness, reaching out, understanding, leaning into the difficult. How about boundaries? How about I statements? How about awareness of what your body is telling you? How about respecting the other person's personhood? Sometimes it's not safe for us to have a conversation with someone who has a really, really, really different opinion on something than we do, because that thing they have an opinion on has to do with our identity or our personal experience, or is something really sensitive and personal to us. That doesn't always mean, though, that we don't have to have the conversation. I like to think about rainbows for a variety of different reasons. This rainbow has nothing to do with gay pride, actually. It has to do with talking across difference. So if you imagine someone who is red has an opinion all the way over here on this side, and someone who is purple has the complete opposite opinion on a topic, and then all the other colors are somewhere in the middle. I find sometimes, as let's say I'm red, it's really hard to have a conversation that is at all effective with someone who is on the purple side. But I have pretty decent skills at talking to people I disagree with because of my training as a minister. So I can pretty comfortably talk to yellow. Doesn't make me happy. It's kind of hard. I might have to go do some self-care after, but I can do it. So I can talk to yellow, and that gets me halfway across the bridge, right? Someone who is yellow might be able to not really get very far other than light green, but they can still talk to light green, right? So that gets us a little bit closer to purple. Now we only have less than half the bridge left. Dark green might be able to talk to dark blue. And perhaps the person who's dark blue, who I might super disagree with, is close enough to purple that they can bridge that last gap and talk to purple. So if we think about moving a community in the direction of the other side of the bridge, it doesn't mean that the red and the purple have to be best friends or ever really come to fully agree. What it means is that each person in the community links arms, links voices, spreads our understanding, and opens our heart just enough that with all of us together, we can span that rainbow bridge. So, now it's time for our lamplighter. We'll talk more about that later in the service.
In a few moments, some of us will leave the sanctuary to enjoy religious education programming. But first, I invite our lamplighter, Calvin, to join me in the pulpit. A lamplighter is entrusted to transfer the light of the sanctuary chalice to the lamp, and then go forth to RE spaces where they will light the chalice there. I invite those going to RE to follow the lamplighter as we carry the flame, expanding our sacred space.
Would you join me in the spirit of prayer? Spirit of life and love, God of many names and yet none at all. Our hearts are stretched thin. We see and hear the devaluing of people of color, of those with disabilities, of women, of immigrants. This list, incomplete as it is exhausting. And yet, we hold fast because we carry hope in our hearts. Hope that together we can dismantle systems of oppression. Hope that the collective of American humanity will look at one another and say, this has got to change. However thin our resilience may be wearing, we do not give up or give in. We look around and see our friends and neighbors carrying signs, moving and marching together because we must not give up. We join thousands of people in the streets. We move for justice. We live for peace. We will not rest until we are heard. We will not rest until equity is made more real all around us. And Spirit of Life, we look within our own hearts to the burning coal that is at the center of our being, the place where our hope for the world lives, the place where our faith in humanity resides, and there we find the strength and the courage to continue moving forward, however muddy and rough the path may be. May we make it so. Amen. We're going to join together in a responsive reading, which will be up on the screen, I think. Yes. You never know. I will read the regular text, and you will read the response. This is by Leslie Takahashi. We celebrate our desires to stretch our wings toward where we wish to fly and soar free.
And thus we make a bridge.
We affirm our commitment to remain connected to those who are still earthbound and captive, remembering that a bridge may be a footpath or an umbrella.
And thus we offer a bridge.
We acknowledge our own desires and also our interconnections with one another.
And thus we build stronger bridges.
We honor our own hearts and also the hearts of our neighbors, friends, and fellow inhabitants of this ever perplexing world.
And thus we are a bridge.
Amen.
Now is the time in our service where we engage in the spiritual practice of generosity. Our gifts support the ministries of this congregation and our work in the broader community. Each week, 1/3 of our offering is given away to a local nonprofit organization doing work to advance our shared values in the world. This month's Share the Plate recipient is Project Feed, our local emergency food pantry that offers culturally appropriate food to those in need. Donations can be made now, as the basket is passed, through the donate button on our website, or if you are a member on Breeze, remembering to make note that your gift is for Share the Plate. If you are visiting us for the first time this morning, please know that your presence is your gift to us. At this time, our offering will be collected and gratefully received. The following reading is an excerpt from a speech given by Martin Luther King III on August 28th, 2018, the 55th anniversary of his father's I Have a Dream speech. Mr. King delivered his speech in front of the U.S.-Mexico border wall in San Diego, California. Hear his words. This border wall behind me has become a symbol of hate and division. It leads to the separation of children from their parents, endangers border communities, and takes the lives of people in search of safety and freedom. For many, it is a symbol that represents the injustices against immigrants and border communities from San Diego, California, to Brownsville, Texas, and beyond. My father was a builder of bridges, not walls. In fact, you could say that his nonviolent leadership was all about tearing down walls. Walls of racial segregation and separation, walls of discrimination and division, walls of fear and ignorance that were created to prevent the unity of people of all backgrounds. There was no room for building walls in Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream. Instead, he was about building bridges, bridges of trust and understanding, bridges of mutual respect and goodwill, bridges of hope and opportunity. And that's what we who believe in his dream must be about today. It is about revitalization, not militarization. That is what we must do to create a great future for all of the people of North America and the world. Towards the final days of his life, my father often turned to a theme honed in the crucible of nonviolent struggle. That theme was a call to conscience. It was a call that would create a collective consciousness that holds the values of human dignity, liberty, and civility. This would be a revolution of values. That revolution would restructure the very architecture of our society. That call to conscience remains today, and it is up to you and me to answer the call and realize his dream.
Destroy
There was no room for building walls in Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream. Instead, he was about building bridges, bridges of trust and understanding, bridges of mutual respect and goodwill, bridges of hope and opportunity. And that's what we who believe in his dream must be about today. The words of Martin Luther King III. This second part of this series on the role of the church in these times calls us, the church, the gathered community, individual people, and institution, to be a bridge. When I watch the news, when I think about the folks who will be gathered at the White House tomorrow in celebration, I do not want to be a bridge. I have very unministerial thoughts because I'm angry at and terrified of and hurt by the values that are animating those rising into power in this country. I've been thinking about the fact that it is both the inauguration as well as the day we celebrate the life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. tomorrow. How MLK will be rolling over in his grave. Then I had the thought, I'm not sure he would have been surprised at all about the way things turned out, which isn't to say he would be happy, but perhaps not at all shocked. I don't know because he's not alive. That's my hunch. MLK was well aware of the power that hatred and division hold in society, the temptation of their narrative. He held that awareness as a Black man in America in every cell of his body. And he chose to believe that the transformative power of love was stronger. I'm grateful that on the days I don't want to be a bridge, which are many days, or at least a bridge across the political divide, I share this belief at my core, this belief in the transformative power of love. I'm grateful that my faith guides me back to the path of courageous love and compassionate justice. In his essay, Nothing Personal, James Baldwin writes that our failure to trust one another deeply enough to be able to talk to one another has become so great that people with questions in their hearts do not speak them. That was in the 1960s. Talking about things that matter with those who hold opposing beliefs is extremely hard to do for many of us. It's a nice idea, something most of us feel we should do, yet it is so easy to get offended, defensive, righteous, to want to prove ourselves and stop listening, or maybe shut down and give up or give in, to be afraid of getting canceled or called out or being wrong. So we opt out and avoid, allowing the chasm to deepen. Or we get in fights, sometimes in person, but more often than not on the internet. Or we rope other people in and create drama, which is its own kind of connection, actually. Dysfunctional, but still connection. One of the ways we can be a bridge is by shifting from defensiveness and judgment to curiosity, my least favorite. My partner reminds me of this shift on a daily basis. There was a piece in The Atlantic this fall that got turned into a podcast by Lauren Ober and Hannah Rosen, a progressive lesbian couple who live and work as journalists in Washington, D.C., entitled, We Live Here Now. Lauren and Hannah's description of the series reads, "We found out that our new neighbors were supporting January 6th insurrectionists. We knocked on their door. This is a podcast series about what happened next." I read the article and listened with obsession to all 7 episodes of the podcast, completely enthralled. Their journalism was humanizing, made space for nuance and complexity, and was unapologetically grounded in their own experience and perspective, yet open and curious and respectful. Over the course of their time building a relationship with their new neighbors, the story of the title is one of them had some choice words about a bumper sticker, and the new neighbor rolled down her car window and said, "We live here now." Over the course of their time building a relationship, Hannah and Lauren deepened their understanding of the kinds of things their January 6th supporting neighbors struggled with. And both sides openly disagreed with one another, but they did move in the direction of understanding and empathy. Nobody fully convinced anyone to change their minds, and perhaps this was able to happen because that was nobody's agenda in the first place. I'm sure there are people in this sanctuary this morning who believe strongly that we should be doing more to converse and connect across the political divide, like Lauren and Hannah. And there are also those of you who feel as though that ship has sailed, that there's no point in trying to understand someone who is living in an entirely different reality than you are. I oscillate between both of these, depending on the day, if I'm being honest. Yet still, I believe that the church has a role to play in our society in being a bridge. This becomes clearer when we look at all of this with some nuance, when we allow gray area to be present and move away from all or nothing thinking. Just because not everyone is equipped to bridge the gap between the 2 farthest points on any given spectrum does not mean we cannot participate in bridge building or that we get to opt out. There are people whose role in the church and in the world is not to have these conversations. Some folks simply do not have the interpersonal or social skills to navigate these dynamics. And it's actually okay and even healthy to name that. Other people have particular traumas that get reactivated and send them into very real distress. And others have marginalized identities, putting them at risk for significant emotional, spiritual, and even physical harm. Someone who survived a particular kind of violence is not going to be the person to converse with and try to understand someone who is causing that same kind of violence. Sometimes they might, if that's what they choose, but more often than not, it won't be them. Someone who is highly reactive and has a tendency to talk over other people is probably not going to be the best person to converse with someone about a hot button topic if there is any hope in not escalating the conversation. It's just true. It's okay. Someone who is queer or trans or a person of color should not have to be the person on the front lines of conversing about their identity with an individual who has homophobic, transphobic, or a racist worldview. They can, if they make that choice, but this is where the critical role of the ally comes in. In racial justice circles, we call this white people's work. In queer circles, we call it the work of the ally. And sometimes the chasm between the two sides is just too wide for conversation to be effective. That's where the rainbow framework from earlier comes in. Purple might not be able to have an effective conversation with orange, but purple can talk to blue. And blue can stretch a little because they're having a good day. And they can have a conversation with yellow. And yellow can talk to orange because they actually get it. More often than not, that is how we build a bridge. There is no one hero. There is no savior in this work. This is the work of community. One of the ways that the church, the community of shared values, can equip her members to engage faithfully in this work is by providing tools and opportunities to practice. Unitarian Universalists talk a lot about covenant, the promises we make about how we want to be together, given our theological diversity. We're really good at making promises. We're not as strong at building the bridge back into covenant when it has been broken, which of course it is because we're people. Last year in this congregation, we spent a lot of time talking about building a covenant for this church. And those of you who have been around for a while will notice that we haven't completed this process. And you might wonder if your minister forgot or dropped the ball on this work. In truth, there was an overwhelming desire for the skills and tools to be able to use a covenant, so much so that I started to wonder if we were traveling in the wrong direction. So we paused. And behind the scenes, where the magic happens, I've been working on developing a series of workshops in collaboration with the lifelong learning manager at the UU Ministers Association to help develop skills for challenging conversations and relational dynamics in a way that is interactive, experiential, and hopefully even fun. Your board and I will be launching this series late winter or early spring. The stronger our bridge to one another in this place, where we share a common language and a set of values, where we know and have committed to this congregation's mission, and where we have opportunities to build trust with one another, the better equipped we are and will be for connecting with others across greater differences. I return often to a quote from Megan Swoboda, an activist out in Minnesota, who says, "Our survival depends on the relationships we build." Our survival depends on the relationships we build. And I believe this to be true at my core. We are social creatures, and too many of us are isolated, left out of the social fabric of our communities. There's an incredible piece that was also just published in The Atlantic about this phenomenon, and I'd highly recommend it. I read it last night, so can't fully explain it to you in today's sermon, but it'll be coming back. The church can be a bridge over which those who are socially isolated can enter into connection and find belonging, meaning, and purpose, which does not necessarily mean others coming in, but more often than not will require us to go out, to reach out beyond these walls and into our community. Not only do isolation and loneliness lead to negative health outcomes, they are also a significant determining factor for radicalization and extremism. I have followed the Southern Poverty Law Center's research for a number of years, tracking hate and extremism in the United States. and I had the opportunity to hear from one of their hate crime researchers at a training last fall in Montgomery, Alabama. What I've learned is that the most likely folks to get ideologically radicalized, sometimes to the point of engaging in acts of domestic terrorism, are isolated, lonely people who feel disconnected, disenfranchised, disempowered, and misunderstood. People who lack purpose, belonging, and social bonds. Communities of faith must remember that we cannot leave people behind, that all of us means all of us. And there are so many ways that we, the church, can do that. We can offer different ways to engage in the life of the community, some deeply spiritual, others project-oriented or justice-focused, and some purely social. We can use connections with those who we disagree with, both as a spiritual practice and as an opportunity for personal growth. What might it look like? What might it look like for us to do the work of micro-bridge building over each little stream and rivulet between us, so that we, through our differences, and though they might be significant, might stay connected to each other, preventing the very abyss we now need bridges to cross in order to heal the chasmic divides of our times. One color at a time, until our rainbow is complete and no one is left behind. I don't know if it's possible, but I plan to try. The outcome is not mine to decide, but the work is mine to take up. So friends, let us tear down walls and instead be a bridge from me to we, from them to us, from despair to commitment, judgment to curiosity, perfectionism to wholeheartedness, alone to together, with love at the center. May it be so. Amen. Our closing hymn this morning is number 168 in your gray hymnal, or up on the screen, One More Step. Dale will play it through once, and then you are invited to rise in spirit or body as we sing together. As we end our time together today in spiritual community, May we depart this sacred space knowing that blessings shall follow us all the days of our lives if we live in and return to right relationships, if we extend grace and forgiveness to ourselves and others, if we behold mercy as a spiritual superpower, if we emanate the greater love that holds us close, may our lives radiate the blessings that we have been given. May kindness and compassion fall gently from us. May there be peace in the world, and may it begin with each of us. Our worship has ended, and our service begins. Go in peace.